I'm Lisi Keeker, a longtime studio owner turned founder here at Studio Grow. Just a few years ago, I was building my studios the hard way. So I didn't have the team, the budget, or most importantly, the time. Now, if you speed up to today, I sold my wildly profitable studios in the mid 7 figures while serving my community in ways I could have only dreamed. Now I work with thousands of boutique fitness studio owners in over 40 countries, and I am so blessed to share some of the best tested strategies for our industry every single week. I created this podcast so you'd always have clear, actionable processes, tried and tested advice, and just some good old-fashioned inspiration. So you can take steps to grow your studio and turn it into a powerhouse empire just like I did. If you're a studio owner who's ready to impact your community and see major growth in the process, or you're prepping to become one, then you're in the right place. So let's kick this off, shall we?
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business of Boutique Fitness. My name is Matt, and I am super excited today because we're diving into a conversation that is essential for the longevity of your studio. So understanding why it is that clients leave us is so important because we've already worked so hard to earn them in the first place.
Well, hey, Matt, I'm Lisa Taylor, Director of Bespoke Consulting at Studio Grow, and this is a great topic. We're not just talking about the surface explanations. We're examining behavioral cues, emotional cues, disconnections, and really product gaps that start forming weeks or months before a person actually goes ahead and quits.
Absolutely. And when you understand patterns and you identify them, then you can intervene early, right? You can fix structural issues and you can rebuild trust that may have been fractured before you start to churn through clients.
So totally. By the end of this episode, you'll know different reasons why your client quits and steps you can take to avoid that.
Let's get into it.
Let's go. Some hidden signals. So it rarely happens suddenly. People make these decisions a long time before they quit. What do they say? Death by 1,000 cuts. Same for this situation. There are a lot of small impressions along the way that have this final large impact of actually losing the client in your studio.
Exactly. And I think that it often feels like it's sudden, but really it's not. Yeah.
No, definitely not. You can definitely catch it along the way with a few key things. You know, it's interesting. Just a few years ago in our industry, I can recall speaking to an industry tech provider and saying, I need to be able to see who's at risk here. And at the time, all the math and the ones and the zeros behind the scenes were unclear. It's come a long way. Most platforms now have an at-risk category.
Yeah. And I think too, all CRMs have this functionality, yet in my experience, I see it so underutilized, is the reason why when we're putting through a cancellation. Okay. And often a lot of that is to do with our teams. And when someone comes up to cancel, they just put other, or the one they always put is moving. Let's real talk. Everyone always just says that they're moving,
it's
right?
Kind of the only real reason.
Exactly. And a lot of times our clients will say, oh, I'm moving, when really it's something else. But when we talk about why clients are leaving our studio, the first point that I want to make is we should be able to quantify that because we should be gathering reasoning for every single cancellation that we take.
Absolutely getting the reason. And of course, from that, having a team that's really well trained about how to respond to those reasons. It's really just an objection that needs a new response to it.
Yeah. So what I really liked that you just touched on, Lisa, when we started this conversation was around it feeling sudden, but it being death by 1,000 cuts. So what would you say are some of the hidden signals that clients are sending us that's preceding their cancellation?
So if we're going to go to the data side of things and what constitutes that at-risk number that can be spit out of a CRM these days, inside of the at-risk is clients who just haven't shown up. I would say in 14 days, sometimes we say in 10. 14 gives people some time to take a vacation, reorient their lives, and get back into the studio. Absolutely, a day beyond 14 is way too long. So that's one of those tiny little instances where they're starting to signal to you that they are maybe something is going on. You at least notice, put a little more attention on this individual.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something really good there because this is something I've always done in my studios, which is having 3 tiers of what I would refer to as a lapsed date client. Okay, now in terms of exactly what those dates are, that's your prerogative to make that up, whether your first tier starts at 14 days, 21, 30, whatever it may be. For the sake of talking, let's just say 30, 60, 90, right? 30 are your newly lapsed clients. 60 are in your real risk category, and then 90 are your long-term lapsed. And I think having a really strategic and intentional outreach system in place that targets each of those 3 tiers, in my experience, has been really successful with getting people back on track.
Okay, well, I've spent 21 years in small studios, yoga studios, and I would say if you wait till 30, 60, 90, you might have waited a little bit too long. I think that that's absolutely important and strategic, but I'd also throw in there that 14 days. Yeah, shorten it up, because the longer they go, the harder it is to pull them back in.
Absolutely. And you guys know your studios. So whatever you feel like is a switch in the norm, that's what we want to trigger this for sure.
Absolutely. So with that, then the people who haven't been in the studio, it's also the package holder who hasn't actually completed. If I've got 8 times a month and I've only been in 6 times, something's not quite right there. I'm not using that value that I've bought.
Absolutely. And we want to ask ourselves, why is that? Is it because they're not feeling the progression? Are they not feeling the workouts? Has something changed with their habits or with our service delivery? I think it's really important to do an introspection analysis on these sorts of things to try to identify what they might be. It sometimes can just be a shift in someone's behavior, right? Something going on in their external life. It's not always a criticism of us when this happens, but I do think it's good due diligence to ask ourselves those questions.
Well, and I think we could wrap that one up with just to think of it as an invitation. They're signaling you, not even knowingly signaling you, and it is an invitation to engage with them. If the whole purpose of boutique fitness is to provide meaningful additional places in a person's life, then them not participating in it is absolutely an invitation to connect.
Absolutely. And I'm being a little facetious when I make this comparison, but you know, when you maybe got a crush on someone or you're starting to date someone and you don't text them because you kind of want them to text you.
Definitely.
Yeah. So doing that proactive reach out, it can go a long way.
You leave me on red.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about experience gaps that push clients away. So it's consistency that's the foundation of trust. And when the class feels unpredictable, the instructors vary dramatically, or energy swings day to day in the classes and in the studio, even that it's a hot class, but now it's not so hot. Those are all different reasons where a client starts to question the value of their membership.
Absolutely. And I always like to say that inconsistency is often unintentional. Okay, so that can happen when instructors, they're maybe not coached, they're not remotivated or re-engaged. The expectations of what's required from them in the classes are unclear. And when the training team is operating in isolation to the larger picture of the studio, that can also cause a disconnect.
Oh, absolutely. Not being able to experience the feedback from what's real time going on and equate that into the training. Totally. Well, so also operational friction and just friction itself. You know, these are people's safe spaces, they're happy places, and they absolutely don't want to walk into spaces, like we said, that are inconsistent, but also that there's any kind of a friction. That can be as simple as it's really hard to book classes or just never getting off the wait list. You know, you feel like, why am I not the one getting chosen here ever? I'm never the one that gets off the wait list and into class. Those are absolutely operational frictions that can really just cause a person to quietly go away. A lot of times when your clients quit, they don't raise a red flag and say, hey, I'm out of here soon if you don't come over and pay attention to me. They just slip away.
Absolutely. And I think operational friction has a huge impact on our teams as well. And I think that that is a big part of this equation too, because when our systems are failing or you know, we've got booking issues or maybe check-in processes are slow and clunky and our wait lists aren't being spoken to effectively, that can cause a lot of tension amongst our clients, which we know our team members feel. And then when they don't feel empowered and supported to be able to execute on the experience side of things really well, then that just compounds everything.
Well, and also the quiet experience, the environmental cues. It might be that cluttered stack of blocks in the corner, weights that don't seem clean or ready for clients, or even a place to put used unclean equipment for being clean the next time. Those environmental cues say to a person, they're not ready for me. The value is not here for what I feel like I'm paying. And it doesn't cost more to keep the space clean, tidy, and ready to go for the next set of clients.
Yeah. And I mean, environments, they don't just speak loudly and immediately, they scream loudly and immediately, right? And if we think that our clients aren't perceptive to all these sorts of things, we need to think again.
Absolutely.
Because they notice everything.
I'll never forget asking my dermatologist to come to yoga. And she's like, I can't imagine putting my face where people's feet were. And I shared, it's mopped after every single class. When your face is down toward the ground, you will not see a dust bunny in the room. But there are people who are perceiving to that level of precision.
Absolutely. I'm one of them.
Totally me too.
Yeah, that's absolutely me. But yeah, it's such an important piece of it. And we need to put ourselves in our clients' shoes when it comes to that.
For sure. So the emotional disconnect or a lack of belonging, that's kind of like a complete break of the brand promise, to be honest, because that is the foundation of boutique fitness. You could go home and do a class by yourself. There are so many good workouts online these days. We can't neglect how important the emotional connection to the business is.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important call out here too, that emotional connection is not solely the property of modalities like yoga, right? Where it's very ingrained in the practice. This is absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, the high five in a HIIT class.
Absolutely. And like even take it outside the realms of the fitness industry. Like every business grounds what it's doing in this to attract and retain customer loyalty, right? Because, you know, it's that famous Maya Angelou quote, people will forget what you said or whatever, but they'll never forget how you feel. And this is really what this one talks to.
It totally talks to this. So when they don't feel seen, they haven't heard their name called, they didn't get pulled off of the wait list, nobody noticed that they finally got the pose, the weight, the endurance that they have been going for a long time, it's might as well go somewhere else or fade away.
Remembering a client's name, I'm sure we've all experienced that, right? Like when we at our coffee shop, when we're getting like our chai or whatever it may be, like people are always, when someone says like, hey, Matt, or they don't have to ask my name because they just know it.
Oh, nothing worse than being your favorite teacher's class and then they act like they'd never heard your name or seen you before. Have we met yet?
So standoffish. Like, what is going on? But you know what I found with this as well is I've managed very high volume studios in my career where we see thousands upon thousands of clients every single week. And of course, it's not possible to remember every single person's name, but that's not an excuse to A, not try, or B, not have a way of kind of overcoming that, right? Like saying something, remind me your name again. Lisa, that's right. I should know that. I'm so sorry.
You're here every week.
You're here all the time. I see you all the time.
My
sorry.
mistake.
I just haven't had my coffee today, Lisa. It's good to see you.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. So the coaching quality matters too. I spent a lot of years building teacher training programs and delivering them. And I finally came to expressing it this way to trainees is, of course, I expect you to be a good teacher. You're hired here. And that's about 5% of what's important about you. There's this other 95% that has a real impact on the business, the clients, your role here. And that is all the other stuff, saying names, knowing what people's goals are and assuring that they meet them, that those goals are celebrated when they're met, that you are a great teammate and prepare the space for someone else. Clients see these things. Over the years, I can't tell you the number of individuals who ran large companies in my town and pulled me aside and said, hey, I really noticed the way your team supports one another, you support the team. It makes a big difference. People are watching.
Yeah, and I always say that culture is built through intention, not assumption. So don't assume that someone spends, a 6-hour shift 3 times a week in your studio because they don't. Right? So you have to be really clear and you have to train your team in how to manifest what culture feels like and belonging looks like for them. Don't assume they know.
In actual concrete action. So a lot of us talk about things like that culture as a concept. Like it feels really good here. People are really aligned and connected. But why? How? What's happening? The other comment you made is people aren't there every single day, all through every single shift. So it can't be a thing that happens on Thursday afternoons. It has to happen every time, everywhere, with every client. That's the only way you can assure yourself that the culture's not the reason why people are slowly fading away.
Absolutely. And you can definitely put in place those expectations that are very tangible amongst your team, like the name thing that we were speaking about. But you can also just try to instill in them an operating behavior and intention, right? So praise delivered with clarity.
Okay, so then very specific expectations of your team. And so as you say, praise delivered with clarity. Notice them doing something good that relates to the goals they shared with you and use their name when you acknowledge that thing specifically. The more specific you can be, the more you know for certain you actually are achieving on these goals of ensuring that your clients don't fade away.
Absolutely. And sometimes praising our clients is not the appropriate conversation that we need to have, and that's okay, right? But so I would say that on the contrast to praise delivered with clarity, we could say corrections delivered with respect.
Yes. And so what does that even look like with respect? That's suggesting, can you feel this? Maybe try this, but always leaving inside of their own hands the autonomy to guide their own practice growth.
And I know you're trying your hardest. If this works for you, let's try this. If not, let's do that.
Yeah, always options and choices for sure. Okay, so then that would take us to the misalignment between client expectations and what you plan to deliver, what you're actually delivering. Left inside of concepts and assumptions, there's a big gap, a lot of space for misunderstanding to occur.
Yeah, and I would say that this is really a classic example of kind of what we said at the start of this podcast around things happening slowly. I think that this misalignment happens over time, and it's through a number of the different functions that we just have as being studio owners. So our marketing changes, right? Our instructors change. We have staff turnover. We update our programming. And I don't think we shouldn't ever be approaching those things with an intention of going against our brand or completely changing our mission. But when you do little bit by little bit, it can start to just get slightly off course.
And so it's really a conversation around communication too. Communication that's very clear. I cannot say how many times over the years I was so frustrated saying, but I'm telling them this way, and this way. But now there are also those other 3 ways that I haven't been trying, I don't know. And that's where these other individuals are listening from. So it's not just how you're communicating, how often you're communicating, that you're also listening back that it was received. And so some of the clear places that makes a difference is in schedule changes, instructor turnovers from shift to shift, that there's good communication about how things are being left and what needs to be picked up. And of course, with that is obviously the communication from shift to shift or accessible to all staff members. What was recently done for a client and what challenges or concerns did they have about their package or participation that's already been addressed? There's nothing more frustrating for clients than to have asked for support or help and it's gone unnoticed, unresponded to, or they continually are getting different responses. So your record keeping and who has access to those records and how often they're checking them is a bigger deal than you think. So we get a lot of clients that come in and there are no records kept under the client profiles.
Mm-hmm. And I think as we link this back to the topic of this podcast, I want to break down this psychological barrier that so many of us impose on ourselves. And that's to say that clients do not resist change. And these clients who are at risk of leaving or have left, that's flagging that they wanted change. Okay, so I think that what clients actually resist is the feeling of being left out of the conversation or left out of the transformation that the studio is undergoing. So when you communicate transparently, right, and clients feel included and respected, then I think that is the kind of change that they're looking for, not the one that arrives without context, and without a sense of stability behind it.
Well, and then even in that description and the way you've just mentioned it, it fosters the sense of community and belonging that we're all, that mysterious, ephemeral sense of community we're trying to create. There are really concrete ways to do that, and that is a perfect one, letting the clients feel like they're in on the secret.
Right, and just because I seem to be making a lot of relationship comparisons right now. But, when people feel like their relationship is destabilized or that they're not involved in the communication or the direction that things are heading, they will look for that elsewhere. So
that's a stop and think moment.
it is.
It's really a stop and think moment. So when life changes, what is there to do about it? Clients leave for reasons outside of your control. They move, they get new jobs, they have a medical situation, a shift in family demands. What else is there?
I think that that's also totally fine. Okay.
Yeah.
If a client is genuinely moving from LA to New York, okay, there's nothing we can do about that, right? That's totally fine. But I think that at a more granular level, outside of those, carte blanches that we just can't do anything about, we can offer them to freeze. We can put them on medical suspension. We can offer to transition them to a shorter term contract or something like that, right? We could downgrade or upgrade a membership to better meet their needs. So there's a lot of practical things that we can implement too.
Well, I don't know that oftentimes we really do consider, are people able to leave with grace here? If you do move from LA to New York and it is time for you to leave, you certainly don't want to feel like you have to kind of sneak out the back door. You absolutely want to feel that the relationship is celebrated and you have a really fond goodbye. So not only do you need the opportunities and the options for changing the level of membership someone has, but there has to also be included inside of that an ability to make endings happen gracefully and beautifully.
Yeah, you don't want to burn bridges, right? Because retention is not only about keeping clients inside of the studio, it's about maintaining that relationship once they leave it.
So true. So every cancellation has a story, right?
They do. Let's start by quantifying them in our CRMs.
And taking a few notes.
Exactly.
But they begin with the quiet signals, and we've talked about a lot of those. I bet you can think of a few more in your own studios. The quiet little ways that students start slowly pulling away that ultimately add up into them disappearing. And then you thinking a few months later, hey, whatever happened to that person? I haven't seen them in so long. And that's pretty stressful to have to think back and realize, oh, shoot, those people were so close. They've been here so long and so often. And now I totally hadn't even noticed for several months.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it all just comes back to eliminating the friction and elevating the consistency.
To strengthen the connection.
Absolutely. And just honoring every client in their own individual goals and their own individual journey and being the studio that they need at that point in their life.
So true. Well, if this conversation supported your growth today, subscribe and leave us a review, and then definitely share what you plan to implement first.
Always a pleasure, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you the next time on The Business of Boutique Fitness.